What's up, guys? Thomas Mott here, joined by Josh Davis, jumping on for some breaking Eagle news about 24 hours, more like 28 hours away, at least as of filming this, from the Eagles' first Week 1 matchup versus the Green Bay Packers. And Josh, it's not good injury news, and it's kind of surprising again. We didn't really see this one coming, as I pull it up on our screen right now, and you see it here. Isaiah Rodgers, he is officially out. He is not going to play in what would have been his debut in Philadelphia's first game in really almost over a calendar year tomorrow night against the Green Bay Packers.
Yes, very devastated. I mean, obviously would be to begin with, but then the storylines of him being forever sitting out for a year, and the excitement there. We obviously, having talked to him previously multiple times, but getting to know him, just the personality, the vibe of the squad, all things like that. And then not to mention, just the benefit to the team to have more depth in the secondary. I'm sure we're going to get into thoughts and takeaways as well of we shouldn't sound the alarms. We shouldn't freak out, thankfully,
Sure.
because we do have the depth. But yeah, it's not one of the ones that you want to start out with, because we had talked about, previously with Devin White and the situation there that was kind of unexpected. This one was even more so because, yes, we had limited practices, but there never seemed to be anything at all out there of like, oh, well, maybe there's more fear or concern that Isaiah Rodgers may not end up playing or may not end up getting in any action, let alone being ruled out. So it's unfortunate. It's sad, but I guess, to ask you, and for those people out there wondering, because I know that we're going to get lots of questions and comments, and this was my first takeaway is, okay, so who is going to be outside, and what does that change? How does that change the alignment for the defense in your mind?
Well, first off, just to kind of comment on the idea of it being a surprise, Devin White did not travel with the football team, and that was kind of the main indicator a couple of days ago. He wasn't on the Wednesday flight over. Isaiah Rodgers was. Isaiah Rodgers, there's video of him boarding the plane, heading down to Brazil, and so was it the walkthrough today? Because they got to walk around Corinthians Stadium and kind of go through at least what I assume was some sort of minor little, if it even was a practice or just kind of a get acclimated with the stadium sort of situation. Was it by then? Mm-hmm. Was it kind of like coming down to the wire and they had to make a call, and so they go ahead and rule him out? Either way, this doesn't seem to be significant long-term. We don't really know the whole Devin White scenario, but it's still a tough blow for a guy who we both not only really like personally, but think he makes the Eagles defense way, way better. And now to answer the main question everyone has, what do you do here? Quinyon Mitchell, I wouldn't be too surprised if they put him on the outside. It really depends on how Vic Fangio views Mitchell versus Ringo. The only question I have, Josh, is if you do go Quinyon on the outside, which they did a lot during training camp, he was not just the nickel cornerback, who then becomes the nickel? Is it Avonte Maddox? That would be the obvious answer. Is it Cooper DeJean getting some run there as a rookie? Yeah. Let's just say they put Quinyon on the outside, which I think they'll probably do Kelee, just to kind of make things, a little bit more fluid. If you put Quinyon on the outside, is it Maddox or is it DeJean or somebody else playing nickel?
Gosh, that's a very difficult question because quite honestly, I want it to be Cooper DeJean. And if we're fast forward like 4 weeks from now, or maybe even a shorter timeline, but certainly like 4 weeks from now, then I go, yeah, it's Cooper DeJean. Like that's a no-brainer there.
Yeah.
But remembering that Vic Fangio even said Cooper DeJean is improving, but he's not where he needs to be yet, seems to suggest you're not really going to throw him out there in terms of the starter role at the nickel. So I think I'm with you also on the thought of, all right, it's going to be in the nickel package. Quinyon Mitchell will be inside, and then you'll have Kelee Ringo outside. However, if you don't go nickel and you're in a base situation where you don't have to have any more than two corners on the field, it's kind of crazy to think about this. I mean, Fangio said it, multiple guys have said it before. It's like you don't want to ask too much of a player to begin with, but a rookie nonetheless. But I think that you'll probably see if they go that route of, hey, Quinyon, you're in the inside whenever they're in the nickel, and then on the outside whenever we're in the base, if you're not having any of those others. So you ask a lot. I mean, that's why you draft a first-round corner, but, it's not going to be an ease into the position of saying, hey, you know what, you're going to just play inside this game. Don't worry about too many, changes of position. You're going to get every single thing from Quinyon Mitchell and having to move him all over the field. And I mean, I hope that we don't have to go to that route because, no offense to Avonte Maddox, but he hasn't gotten hardly any snaps from all reports at the nickel in the slot since what are we talking about? Maybe the first couple days of practice and training camp. Other than that, it was like, hey, go be a safety. So it's not that he can't move in there. I know he has plenty of reps, and I'm not saying that, but ideally you go with, I assume, Quinyon Mitchell here, and then hopefully Zay's able to come back quickly. Cooper DeJean gets caught up to speed, and weeks beyond this, it's not as much of an issue. But, lo and behold, here we are. We're talking about some sort of secondary issue. But the positive that we can say, and we've said it a number of times, at least we're in this position now than we were last year. Because if we had one injury, we'd be going, oh my gosh, because it was the constant theme of the secondary. So at least you do have that depth, but it is just a little bit, I don't know, ironic, if I guess is the correct word there, of that we're sitting here, haven't even played a game yet, and we go, oh, well, there you go. There's a linebacker out, wondering what we're going to do there and what's going to happen at the slot position. So I don't know. It's par for the course. Some people say here also, I saw a comment, this is ridiculous, but the Eagles apparently tried to trade Isaiah Rodgers, to try to throw fuel on the fire as far as the Devin White, so that is not true. That's sarcasm, just for people that may hear that and try to freak out.
If you're just joining us, Isaiah Rodgers, he's officially out with that hand injury. I saw a question asking, did this just randomly pop up on the flight? No, he's been limited in practice for a couple of practices over the course of the week, and so I guess just not good enough. Again, he did fly down there. He is in Brazil, and so it must have been kind of a game-time decision, and obviously you got to rule people out at least the day before the game actually takes place per NFL rules, and so they had to kind of make a call right now and not let him at least go put him on the final injury report if they want to activate somebody else to take his spot, right? You could wait until the actual kickoff and then say he can't go, but then you can't activate somebody to go ahead and fill his spot. So that's kind of the reasoning here on why this happens. I also see a super chat here from Jeremy said, I heard it's Q starting outside with Maddox at nickel. I just saw an Andrew DeCecco tweet saying it will likely be Kelee Ringo on the outside with Quinyon at the nickel, although my base assumption here, going with the same word, base defense, Q on the outside, nickel defense, which they're going to run a ton of tomorrow night, Q goes to the inside, and then Ringo goes to the outside, right? That's the main expectation.
And I saw the same thing from John McMullen as well. So I feel like that's the
multiple guys.
Standard line of thinking would be you go Kelee and Quinyon Mitchell. I have not, again, could be wrong. Maybe Jeremy, there's something out there, and maybe it ends up being true. I have not seen anything yet. Same deal as you, just going through Twitter, which of course, this is coming from the interns of those writers because they can't actually tweet this out from Brazil unless they're using a VPN. But from what we've got so far, it does sound like it's a Kelee Ringo situation and, an opportunity for him, quite honestly, because we talk about the same thing for Nakobe Dean. But, hey, if Kelee Ringo was not expected to get the start, it was going to be Isaiah Rodgers from most all reports. It's just one game. But if he goes out there and he plays really well, then all of a sudden, do you have a bigger question? It's a good problem to have, I suppose. But all of a sudden, you have a guy who played himself into a starting role. Maybe so. That's just another thing to keep an eye on. But you got to at least like his size when we talk about the matchups for the Packers. That is a benefit for Kelee Ringo and what he brings to the table. So we'll see. Should be
Here's
good.
An update from Jeff McClain. He was asked Ringo or Q on the outside. He says both. Quinyon in the slot, though, in nickel. So looks like they're going to kind of roll with the punches, play the hot hand, depending on what defense they're in. But again, we assumed that they would basically be playing a lot of nickel. The Packers run a lot of 3 wide receiver looks, a lot of 4 wide receiver looks as well. And so Quinyon Mitchell is going to be, baptism by fire here, Josh. This is going to be a real test for the rookie now, playing even more than he was expected. And now you got to kind of think about, he was probably prepping in terms of game prep and film prep and everything for the Packers as their main nickel. I'm sure he was dabbling in what it takes to be the outside cornerback tomorrow, but really his focus was on being the nickel because Rodgers had won the outside job, and now he's got to kind of crash course himself. Not really, because he obviously plays basically solely on the outside at Toledo, but there's probably some extra studying tonight to make sure that he feels confident, whether he is in a base defense on the outside, a nickel or dime defense on the inside, and so again, everyone raved about him during training camp, and now it's his time to go ahead and shine.
Yeah, he's going to have quite a bit on his plate, which, I guess that's why you're drafting him as a first-round draft pick, but it's still one of those situations, even if we're not talking about just a football position, really, I think about it in terms of, even in your everyday life, everyday job, if you plan on one particular responsibility, one particular task, and then you go ahead and say, oh, this is what you're going to do differently, it does shake some things up. Now, that's not to say that we already heard the reports of hey, Fangio's going to try to get him out there for as many snaps as possible because he's phenomenal and he's got a ton of potential. But at least the beauty is he's getting those reps against A.J. Brown, against Devontae Smith in the slot, or in the slot and on the outside. So there's nothing in terms of just, sheer ability, talent, skill, anything like that that's going to have him, just kind of a fish out of water or intimidated, anything of that nature. But it's just more so on the fly in quick situations. If they're trying to make adjustments quickly, get a guy on the field, okay, move into the slot, processing wise, is there a little bit of rust? Is there a little bit of, oops, okay, he's out of position because he's trying to go from one position to the next very quickly? That's the part that we don't know. But I mean, ultimately, I think that he's going to be fine. And there's lots of hype around Quinyon Mitchell. It's just, here we are. And for people that are freaking out, it's not, it is news, but come on, we've got this. This is not us saying, no, I guess no offense, I shouldn't say this, but it's not us saying like, hey, we got Bradley Roby coming in here for them, right? Like this is Quinyon Mitchell
Josh
here,
Jobe
who's a
is
little
starting
bit
against
more
Christian
right. Josh
Watson.
Jobe, it's a little bit more than that, so I think we'll be okay.
Let's just go ahead and do a little of Big J journalism here. I have pulled up the Eagles' most recent tweet, which you see on your screen right now. I have paused it. That is Isaiah Rodgers next to Quinyon Mitchell walking onto Corinthians Stadium in Sao Paulo a mere 3 to 4 hours ago. He's putting on some sort of brace sleeve. I can't tell if that's an elbow sleeve. It doesn't look like any sort of hand sleeve. It's pretty wild that he looks good to go here in terms of a hand injury, and then they're ruling him out at the very end. It's just fascinating to me, and you'd love to know exactly what the extent of this injury is. A lot of times cornerbacks will kind of wrap things up, and they will try to go ahead and play. I know it's harder to intercept a football, but if it's not that bad, you could put a wrap on it, put a brace on it, and just play, bat the ball away. But if the Eagles want to do a lot of press man, get your hands on Christian Watson and Romeo Doubs, then that could be a little bit more of a problem. So they feel confident enough, and the guy standing next to him, again, in the video a couple of minutes ago, and Quinyon Mitchell getting ready, obviously in 27, not in his usual 30 during training camp after Zack McPherson was cut. But I think the confidence is obviously going to be just fine for a guy like Quinyon Mitchell. I have no issues with Quinyon Mitchell rolling out there, and maybe this is just his coronation. Maybe this is the real coming out party where it might have been suppressed a couple of weeks with less snaps in the nickel. Now, you roll out there, Josh, you get an interception, you ball out against a pretty good receiving corps. It's not Justin Jefferson or Tyreek Hill, but if he shuts down Christian Watson, if he goes one-on-one versus Romeo Doubs, the cameras are going to be all over him. It could really start to boost that aura around Quinyon Mitchell that already seems to be so high.
Oh, without a doubt. Yeah. Because again, you talk about all those assets of it, but also you're in prime time action where the rest of the league, everyone is going to be watching you. It's Friday night football, Friday night lights in Brazil. So if you make a statement, I mean, you're going to be making plays, hopefully, but if you're doing it both on the outside and the inside, I mean, we can guarantee ourselves that coming into the game, the pre-production work that goes into a broadcast is already like, okay, who we're going to talk about, highlight players, all this other stuff. So Q was on the map. Like Q was going to get his face time and his screen time, but this just heightens it. I mean, it's to another level because the same NBC production is going to be like, oh, you got a rookie here that's going to play multiple positions. Yeah, they will absolutely be highlighting Quinyon Mitchell. So if he goes out there and balls out, he will 100%. He's already on the radar for some people, but he's going to skyrocket because it's still, like you say, it's not a Justin Jefferson. It's not the cream of the crop for talent. But to do that first game NFL action in Brazil, I mean, there's not a lot of other, I guess, wrenches or changes that you could throw at a player in that sense and be like, okay, there you go. There's your first welcome to the NFL moment. And you're going to play both positions as much as possible.
Again, if you're just joining us here, injury report is officially out. Obviously, no Devin White. He didn't fly down there. No Isaiah Rodgers either. He was limited all week with a hand issue. He was at Corinthians Stadium a couple of hours ago. He obviously flew down to Brazil as well, and he is not going to go ahead and play. And the early reports right now, based on people in the know and on the ground in terms of team reporters, is that it will be Kelee Ringo on the outside in nickel and dime, and obviously if they want to go quarters coverage as well. But then, of course, if they're in base defense, it'll be Quinyon on the outside, and then Quinyon will go to the slot or the nickel position in a nickel defense or a dime defense. So they're going to be moving people around. Credit to Howie Roseman. He did see last year that when one starting cornerback went down, when Darius Slay missed games, it was like, oh boy, we are in deep trouble. We have a lot of confidence in this Eagle defense, and I see a lot of people worried about the Eagle defense. I think they're going to be just fine. I mean, this is not like Kelee Ringo was some sort of fourth-string scrub all training camp long. This was a battle with Quinyon Mitchell the entire training camp, Josh. I mean, every week it was like Kelee starts today, then there was Isaiah, then Quinyon, and then slowly maybe the kind of, pieces were to fall. But all reports, including the preseason action, had Kelee Ringo looking really, 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 really good.
Definitely, yes, and remember that, A.J. Brown's talking about Kelee Ringo even as well, as early as last year, saying like, "Hey, he's got all-pro potential," and that just increased for training camp of, him like, "Hey, who's a guy that really gives you some trouble or every once in a while gives you some fitness?" Like, "Hey, Kelee Ringo, like, he makes
Yeah.
plays, he plays physical, he can, the fluidity of his hips, which were concerned by a lot of people, changed that dynamic because he got a lot of praise coming into it as well as far as, competition for that outside spot." So, I think it's twofold there because we're going to actually get to see it. We've heard rumors, seen very small glimpses, the Eagles open practice, training camp, and things like that. But to actually see it now, and you would imagine he's going to get a bulk of the snaps on the outside because just the way that the Packers like to do their alignment, you're going to assume Fangio is going to play in the nickel quite a bit. So Kelee Ringo will be out there, and you get to see, does he live up to the hype? Can he continue to play better and transition into that second year player that we hope that he can be? But he did play, fairly good. It was spotty last season, but it's a different defensive coordinator. It's a different defense. Everyone knows that. So I'm excited to see the potential. I'm not concerned. I've seen a few comments as well, just, like, hey, what are we going to do with Kelee Ringo out there? But it's a different team altogether. And I think the cohesiveness of the group combined with Fangio, say what we will about like a lot of rotation and hey, this guy's playing first. Oh, this guy's rotating and playing first. Now it's second string, third, getting them all different types of action. Well, there's a reason why they do that. It's not the best case scenario when you say it's for an injury basis, but you're going to be more confident going into that situation. I think we're going to be okay. Ultimately, I would just say that like this is not, I think I saw a comment earlier too. This is not the same situation as last year, right? Like we are seeing some injuries. I'm not freaking out. There's not a major concern here. I'm not going like, oh my gosh, like this game just got so much more difficult. Did it get a little bit more difficult? Okay, maybe, but we have a lot of depth in the secondary. So I'm not too concerned there. It's a difference of last year where I didn't have beliefs with the starters out there, let alone once we try to go into the backups. Now I've got a more belief in the starters. There are some question marks out there that we do need to see them prove it. But again, we remember that Vic Fangio is a little bit of a defensive coordinator, or a little bit different of a defensive coordinator than a Matt Patricia or Sean Desai. I know that's an obvious statement there, but we're going to be okay. We're going to be fine.
Not according to the comment section, Josh. D. Jackson says the defense is going to be very disappointing. We have no pass rush, terrible linebackers, and now we're down 2 starters.
Oh, my gosh.
It's not even... We haven't even kicked yet. Can we let's be glass half full until they prove us not to actually believe it's a glass half full situation.
There you go.
I think they're going to be just fine. Just fine.
It's going to be okay.
Oh, my goodness. Yeah, people are already freaking out. And listen, the Eagle offense scores 30 points tomorrow. They're winning this game regardless of how the defense plays, right? And we said this last night during our live stream. A top 15 defense, the 15th ranked defense in the National Football League. Pass coverage, pass rush, run defense. Make sure that Philadelphia is a very, very good football team. It's a 12-win football team with a mediocre defense because the offense will be top 5. We know that. And the defense last year was bottom third of the league, 32nd in pass coverage, worst in TDs given up to receivers. You just make that average instead of worst in the league, and this team goes from double-digit wins to probably double-digit wins, but looking a little bit more better, I guess, doing it.
I want to get your thoughts on this, too. I totally agree. I want to get your thoughts, though, also, because this game, to me, it starts with the at least as far as the defensive side, it starts with stopping the run game, right? So if we're looking at the Packers here and Josh Jacobs and what they want to do, secondary, sure, that matters. Like we could go into some of these injuries and say, okay, how are these guys going to play? But ultimately, if you come out and you're able to stop the run, you make them one-dimensional, then we should be okay. So going into it, I see the comments. I know you mentioned those too. When you look at the squad here, like there is reason to be optimistic about this as far as, okay, hey, you know what to expect. Fangio's mentioned in some pressers, but do you see any issues as far as run defense goes too? Because I mean, I know it's all in tandem and there's a marriage between the pass coverage, the secondary, the run defense, everything there. But like ultimately, where do we fall within the run defense?
I mean, I don't think that Isaiah Rodgers playing would have made a big difference here. Jordan Davis and Jalen Carter have got to be great tomorrow night. And Bryce Huff, again, the big knock. Can he play against the run? Can he play without Quinyon Williams? Again, he was pretty good in his very limited preseason action, but show us you can stop the run. Jordan Love's a great quarterback. Nobody is arguing that. The media is telling you he's an MVP, but they're going to try and run the football like crazy with Josh Jacobs tomorrow. So they want Josh Jacobs to have 25 carries for 135 yards and 2 touchdowns. If that happens, they're probably winning that football game. If it doesn't, and they force Jordan Love to drop back and pass 40-plus times with the Eagle pass rush that I think is going to be pretty good. I think Jalen Carter is going to ball out. I think Bryce Huff is going to have a ton of one-on-one opportunities. They can win this game. And so
Yeah.
Rodgers being out stinks just from a standpoint of a couple of things. He did win the starting job, so he technically was your second best cornerback behind Slay. And we obviously know him personally. We've hung out with him multiple times, at least on live streams and in person. And then obviously it was his comeback day, right? This was his time to come back. He'd been out of the National Football League for over a calendar year. Now he has to wait one more week for probably the home opener, next Monday night. So not that big of a deal. That's the bummer there. From a pure game standpoint, this is still virtually the same defense. And again, if Quinyon Mitchell is the next Sauce Gardner, if he's the next Patrick Surtain, and it's just a matter of getting him some reps, then you just anoint him now, see what happens, and he gets his, trial by fire and learns and gets better and better as the games go on. So it's a bummer, but it is definitely not the worst thing in the entire world.
Totally with you. Yes. Again, that's why you drafted a first-round corner and a second-round corner, but just Coop's not there because of the hamstring. So I really don't think that we'll see him play many snaps. He could get in a few if you're just spelling somebody or, just a random occurrence. But Fangio, again, let's be honest, Fangio is brutally honest in his pressers, and he's going to call it like he sees it. So for him to go out there and say, you know what, Coop's not ready, he's not where we want him to be, but he can be, and he's improving. It's like, all right, you know what? Hey, maybe it's next week. Maybe it's a couple weeks. But it's the beauty of having the backups. It's the beauty of having depth in the secondary. It's going to be fine. And I'm, again, totally with you on that because you drafted Q for the reason of being a playmaker. They very much believe in him. And he's only proven that continuing on. I mean, you go further and further, but if you watch the press conferences or you remember in sequential order, it was like, okay, Q's doing good. And then, okay, Q's playing phenomenal. All right, now he's trash talking AJ Brown and Devontae Smith. And now he's getting some kudos from them too. So it's continued an upward trend. Yes, you want to see it obviously against, the opposite competition. But, everyone on the chat here would agree with this because it's like, it's AJ and Smitty. You're not going to get a better talented, better reps one-on-one every single day in, day out of practice than against these guys on the receiver corps. So he's fine. Defense is going to be good. And I'm excited. I think they'll surpass most expectations. I don't think that there's like crazy high expectations, understandably. Sure. But I think if we were just to average out what the basic expectations are for this defense, I think they'll surpass that actually because people may be sleeping on that or just not sure what this team's going to be. But they're going to be good.
Let's at least acknowledge the fact that Cooper DeJean is still going to play tomorrow night, whether it's just in special teams, it's just as a gunner. When you get to dime coverage, does he come in and play kind of the other nickel cornerback slot, the other, side of Quinyon Mitchell? Probably so. I mean, I think he's going to go ahead and definitely play. And again, he was looking really good during OTAs, albeit a long time ago, but then he has the injury for training camp. It stunts the growth a little bit. But you got to believe the past 2 weeks, and really the past 4 weeks, because we've had kind of this middle 2-week bye after training camp was over, getting ready for the game. He's been working his butt off to go ahead and get as close to being ready as possible. And I know I see comments saying he's still not ready. He might not be at 100% of the player he can be his rookie season. That still doesn't mean he's a bad player. He was fantastic, obviously, in college, drafted in the second round. Some thought he could be a first-round pick, and so he will contribute as well. And so when you have comments like Bird Gang saying, I thought we were young, we wanted young corners playing, we are having young corners playing, right? Like, that's Isaiah Rodgers is young.
Yeah.
They're all young except for Darius Slay. And Josh, let's at least acknowledge another name. James Bradbury remains on this roster, obviously in an injured standpoint, but if you were to have problems going down the line, you can move him back to cornerback. They have so much depth, not just for this game on Friday, but going forward that they're going to be just fine. Everyone's freaking out. They're going to be just fine.
Yeah, we'll be okay. That's the thankful part right there. We appreciate the two. I don't exactly understand the young comment because it's not like we are saying James Bradbury is the guy who's coming in here and starting at that other spot. So whether it is someone who's a little bit more of a veteran like Isaiah Rodgers, or it's which we'll actually see, Quinyon Mitchell, Kelee Ringo. Again, remember, Kelee Ringo's younger than most guys that got drafted this past year. Like, he's a really young player. So I don't know if that's the comment referring to, but either way, you've got players of the future. And, again, it's just kind of an extra leg up on the competition or in terms of the market in general, just thinking about the cornerback market. But, shout out to Patrick Surtain, good for him, resetting the cornerback market, the money that he got in his deal with the Broncos. But here you have Howie Roseman and drafting the corner in Quinyon Mitchell. You have Quinyon Mitchell and Kelee Ringo on rookie deals. And yet, you got a lot of payment for cornerbacks. But this is for the future. These guys are going to be the answer. Hopefully, should be Isaiah Rodgers at some point whenever he gets back. But it's, definitely the youth and a lot of development. and Slay out there as well, right? Like we'll see. He had the surgery late last year. He said that he's feeling spry. He's feeling better than he has in a long time. To have that leadership as far as just how to play the corner position, mentorship of Q, which Q's spoken very highly of. That's another aspect of it as well. So I'm interested to see that. But the gelling of the team, especially within the secondary, I think is something that'll be very different from what we saw last season. And just not near as many concerns, beforehand, where it was like, what are we going to do? It's going to be the same old, same old. I think it'll be drastically different from what we saw beforehand.
Let's wrap up with some super chats here. Brian Pumper says, calling it now, Cooper DeJean gets a pick and says, Jordan Morgan over me, book it. Here's a good one. I wouldn't mind that happening. Okay. At least the interception part. And then Bird Gang says, point was aimed at the fans who are freaking out. Okay, I understand now.
Oh, okay. All right, appreciate that. I was going to say, we weren't really saying any youthful.
That makes way more sense. Okay. Way more sense. Okay.
We appreciate everyone in the chat. But yeah, sometimes we can't get to all the comments, and so then it seems like it's either for our conversation or some of those, but totally understandable. We appreciate it.
Keep in mind, we'll be live tomorrow night for the entire game, broadcasting it here on both of our channels. Hopefully the best Eagles broadcast you guys can find on the entire internet. If you don't want to pay for Peacock, which I don't blame you on that one, we'll be here. Go and hit that subscribe button. If any other news happens between now and kickoff, we'll jump on for lives as we always do. First people to have all the latest and breaking news here on YouTube regarding your Philadelphia Eagles. We're going to wrap up here about 25 minutes. For Josh Davis, I'm Thomas Mott. Signing off. The Birds are going to be just fine. We're still predicting a win. Hopefully Isaiah Rodgers gets better. We're looking forward to seeing him play, hopefully next Monday night, which we'll cover as well, but that remains to be seen. Go Birds. They're going to be just fine.
There you go. Go Birds.